Welcome to Healing for the Soul podcast, with this being season number 4, episode number 50. I am your host, Robin Stoltman, and today I have my guest, Renee Bergmen, who is a functional diagnostic practitioner on the show talking about the importance of gut health. And before we get started, remember every week I feature different guests to help you become the best version of yourself through different methods you may not have heard of or thought of. So let's get started. Thank you so much, Renee, for being here. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on.
So what is your specialty like within the gut health? Is it just gut health, or like what does this all entail?
Absolutely. So my full title is a functional diagnostic nutrition practitioner, which is a lot of words.
Yes.
Really, the basic, you always have to laugh at the alphabet soup that goes at the end of someone's name. But the basic concept of what I do is I'm a health detective. I get to the root causes of why people don't feel the way they want to feel, why their energy is totally depleted, why they have severe gut issues, why their hormones are completely out of whack. And I use functional labs to get to find all of the information of what's happening in the body. And then we come together as a team to put together a formulated plan of what they need to seek out healing. So that will include changing some habits throughout their day. It will include adding movement into your day. It'll include looking at the foods that you eat and what foods actually fuel you. I'm not a big fan. I don't like the 4-letter word, which is DIET. I don't like diet because, diet is not what makes us healthy, right? We've been sold that time and time again. We've been sold, try this diet, try that diet. The best thing that you can do is learn how your body functions and what foods make you feel good. And so I do a lot of intuitive eating with people and teaching them how to really listen to their body. That's why my company is called Megaphone Functional Health. And that's because I believe that your body is a megaphone and it has something to say to you. It wants to speak loudly for what is going on internally. So that's sort of the gist of what I do, really getting to the root conditions of why people are sick and not feeling well, and helping them to figure out a healing pathway that works for them, for their lifestyle, and really turns them into having the energy that they always dreamed of.
And I'm hoping that's without caffeine. If I'm understanding everything correctly, without caffeine and without needing sugar. Sugar is like a short-term energy boost.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. We talk all about that. We talk a lot about what does it look like to eat whole foods. So there's a lot of buzzword around that. And there's a lot of like, oh, do Whole30 and try the paleo diet and all of those things. And those are not bad in and of themselves. They have a lot of really great concepts. But it's important to understand why you're eating what you're eating and what it's providing for your body, right? And so
yeah, that makes sense. Because I know, like, one thing that has never made sense to me is if the food I'm eating supposedly is supposed to give me enough nutrients and vitamins and minerals, then why do I need the multivitamin? Why do I need this extra, like especially when women are pregnant? It's like, why do I need this extra stuff if the food I'm eating is supposed to already have that? I've never understood that.
That is a confusing part of health. So there's multiple parts to that answer. So I do use supplementation with my clients. And usually the reason that we're using it is you want to think about what is the word that you're taking. A supplement. It's a supplement to areas that you have that have some holes in your nutrition. And so the way we figure that out, I don't just say, here, take this multivitamin. Here, take vitamin D. Here, take this. I don't have a one size fits all. We look at functional labs to see what vitamins and minerals are your body are deficient in and how do we support those. But first we support it with food because food is medicine. And so first we look at what are the foods that give you those nutrients. And then sometimes we've got to come alongside and use some supplementation to boost the body. But ultimately at the end of working with me, my goal is not for you to have this huge long list of things that you continue taking, but that you have a very, very pars down small amount of supplements that continue to just help your body do the things that it's designed to do, but primarily you get your medicine through the food.
That's what I was thinking. I know it's also one of the most abused out there too. Is that, myself included on the abusing of food, because it's like there's food's around us all the time.
All the time.
And what do you mean by like the functional labs? Because I know you'd mentioned that.
Yep. So functional labs are labs that look at all the different systems of the body. So I run 5 key functional labs on almost every single one of my clients. I also have some extras that get added in. So one of them is a GI map. This is the keystone of the program working with Megafund Functional Health, is looking at, it's a stool sample. So we talk a lot about your poop when I work with you, because it tells us a lot about what's happening internally for you. But it's a stool sample that gives us 89 different markers on what is happening in your gut. Do you have the right bacteria in there? Do you have overgrowth of bacteria? Do you have parasites? Do you have worms? Have you picked up some kind of overgrowth of a bacteria that's going to allow other parasites to come in, so we can see the levels to where those bacteria are at? Yes. And if they are at a high level, then we know that you are more susceptible to taking on E. coli or some other kind of parasite or bacteria that can really, attack your immune system. And then we also look at your immunoglobulin markers, your intestinal markers. So there's these markers in the intestine that tell us, are you breaking fat down? Because fat is key for our body to do all the necessary processes that it needs to do. So cholesterol, which comes from fat, good, healthy fats, is the keystone of making hormones. And so we want to know, is your body actually breaking that fat down so that you're getting good cholesterol into your body so that your hormones are being produced appropriately? So we look at all of that with the GI map. That is what one of the functional labs is. And then we look at your hormones. And the hormones, we don't just look to see if you're creating them. We already know you're creating them. Both male and female, you are creating hormones all the time. However, we want to know, how are they related to one another? So we look at, are they balanced with each other? And then we look at, are you using them down the correct pathways? So you have these different pathways that your body uses them. And you have like protective pathways, and then you have destructive pathways. And when we see that maybe you have like a preference that your body is using, like say estrogen in an E2 pathway, you're more at risk for what we would consider like E2 cancers. So like breast cancers and cervical cancers, things like that we know that women can be really susceptible to. Men as well. It's becoming more and more common for men to have estrogen dominance. And when you have estrogen dominance, your body has way too much estrogen, and it's more at risk for those inflammatory markers to get out of control and for genetic, mutation stuff to happen, like cancer. So we look at how all of that's functioning. I don't diagnose. I'm not giving a diagnosis to anyone, but I'm telling them, this is what your body's doing. And here are the steps that we do to help correct the way that your body is using these hormones so that you feel better, so you have better cycles, that you sleep better, that your melatonin is more balanced, that your serotonin and your dopamine are balanced. So in the gut, part of why I'm a huge advocate of working on the gut is because the gut-brain axis is so key to making sure that we feel good, right? Because dopamine and serotonin, those are our happy hormones, right? That's what makes us feel like we can get up and do our day. And when we have the epidemic that we have going on of depression across the board, especially after all we've been through these last couple of years, it's so key to understand if your body is producing those key elements of dopamine and serotonin, and if they're getting used appropriately. So that's another one. And then we look at minerals. Minerals, I like to say, are what turn the engine on of your body. So your minerals are what make you feel like you can actually get up and move throughout the day. And so a lot of people are really depleted on minerals. And then they might have heavy metal toxins. So we test for heavy metals. That's a really common thing. Lots of people have a lot of high levels of aluminum based on deodorants they're using and cookware that they're using, plastic. Yes, aluminum is in cookware.
But I mean, how does that Oh, I suppose because it would still get into the food.
Yes. So if you are using nonstick pans, you've got to throw them away. So, for a while it was like Teflon was bad. And so Teflon went away. But guess what? They just recreated it in another form. So anything that's like a nonstick pan, that is leaching into your food, and that is creating heavy metal toxins to go into your body, and your body cannot handle heavy metals.
I had no clue about that. My mind just went like, what?
Yeah.
So like, what about like cast iron skillets? Are those better? Like, what are you supposed to cook your food on then?
So my recommendations are cast iron and steel. So just basic, your basic steelware that has no coating to it whatsoever. Those are two of my favorite. There's a lot of greenware type cookware out there.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really found any of them. They're trying to make like a healthy version of a nonstick. Honestly, if you learn how to use cast iron and just like a basic steel cookware set, you don't need all of that extra coating and things like that. When you learn how to cook well on those, you will love them. The way that you can sear meat and cook veggies and things in cast iron, it's one of my absolute favorite ways. I have tons of cast iron. It's my favorite way to cook. And what's great about cast iron is you don't really have to wash it a ton, because the goal is to get lots of buildup so that it's nice and it doesn't stick and whatnot. So it's a fantastic thing to cook.
I did not know that. So my mom has one thing that I don't know about, which was the cast iron.
Ah.
So that's a plus. So
Yep.
now when she goes, well, she's got years to go, but I'm like, okay, I'm taking your cast iron.
And
Now
that's what's
when I go to
amazing about
Costco, they'll
it.
pick 'em up.
It lasts forever.
Yeah, they do. That's why I was saying. That's why I said, I'm like, I'll take all hers.
Yeah.
I didn't think, to me, I'm just like, they're heavy.
They are heavy. So I have one cast iron pan that just sits on my stove all the time because we use it so often. And then my extra ones, it's harder if you're teaching children how to cook. So I've had to learn that that means that I need to probably help with pulling pans off the stove and whatnot. That's where stainless steel is helpful when you're teaching your kids to cook so that they can lift it. I'm in that phase of life. So I have an 8.5-year-old and a 12.5-year-old. So they're always wanting to make their own food. So that's where we use the stainless steel, but they know how to use the cast iron. They just know they can't lift it up because it's too heavy and it's hot, so they just have learned. They've learned you don't touch it.
Mine are in the stage of they can just watch, because mine are 6 and under. So I'm like, they're just staring. They're just staring. So that's what stage they're at.
Yep. That's wonderful. That's such a good phase. And it's so important to have our kids involved in cooking because it teaches them a lot about their own personal health and how they eat, why they eat, what they want to eat. Cooking is the beginning of digestion. That's what I talk a lot about when it comes to gut health, because when you're cooking, your olfactory, so your smelling and everything, is what turns on salivation. So your salivation and having the release of spit in your mouth, right? Yeah. Saliva is beginning to turn on enzymes that are preparing your body to eat food, taste food, and break that food down. And so when you're cooking, it's such an important key. That's why you could not be hungry and all of a sudden you smell something. You're like, oh my gosh, I could eat that right now. Right? That's because your smell is such an important part of digestion. It tells your body, hey, we're getting prepared and ready to take in nutrients. So the way you eat is so important. And cooking, it's part of why it's so important to have kids a part of your cooking process, because it teaches them that as well. It prepares their bodies. How many times do your kids eat snacks all day after they've gotten home from school and then they're not hungry for dinner? Yes. It's that is the every nemesis of every mother. They're like, oh my gosh, I just spent all this time. So that's why I try and start cooking a little bit earlier with my kids so that they begin the process of smelling the food and they're prepping and being ready. And if they want a snack, I'll say, you can snack on veggies. So if they're actually hungry, they'll do it. If they're truly hungry, I'm like, here's some hummus and veggies. You can eat that. If they're actually hungry, they'll eat the hummus and veggies. But if they're not, then they'll wait for the food And then their system is so much better set up to digest and really process their food, get all the nutrients. They're learning a ton about their own body and how it works, and how they take things in.
So what about like the stoneware? Because I have a lot of Pampered Chef. I'm like, is that good
So
then
stoneware
too?
is okay. It is. You want to
Okay.
really make sure that it doesn't have like coatings that are.
No, they don't have any coatings on them. You actually have to do just like the cast iron. Like you
Yep.
have to cook a bunch of food and then you scrape it, never put in soap and water because then it ruins the pan and then you get soap in your food. Like the
Yep.
taste of the soap from
Yep.
the stoneware.
Yeah, stoneware is great. I just haven't ever used it. And so it's not one that I typically tell people, only because I don't use it myself.
Well,
But
no, that's fine. I just had to ask because I'm like, I'm
stoneware,
just like fascinated by this because I'm like, I didn't really stop and think about it. Yeah, I'm still putting when you said that because I got to thinking, well, wait a minute, you got the plastic from the silverware or from the, like from the spatula or whatever you're using. You're getting that plastic in your food, even though it's a slow leak. You're still getting it in there. Then you're getting the leak from the pan, and I'm like,
it's a lot of
I thought I was doing really good with having just chemicals out of the home. Like I'm not using like bleach and stuff. I don't use that.
Yeah. And it's a process. That's something that's really important when I work with clients. I work with clients for an entire year because it takes a long time to really turn and shift your health. And so you've got to take it in chunks and bites of things that you have to get rid of. And so getting rid of toxins in your home, it takes a while. We've been so inundated that we need all these cleaners and things like that. You can clean your entire house with vinegar and baking soda. Like, I use some other things. I like Thieves Cleaner through Young Living. I like
I love it too.
I know it smells great, but you know what? On times where I've been on a tighter budget, vinegar cleans and disinfects. There's tons of different recipes of how to mix it with water and like dilution. And baking soda is great for scrubbing and cleaning a myriad of things throughout your house. It's amazing what baking soda will get off. So you can go toxin-free very easily and very cheaply. Now, there's plenty of companies out there that are kind of like marketing to you if you're trying to go toxin-free, and they're not bad. They're good. But you don't have to have the fancy version of the non-toxic. You can go as cheap as vinegar and baking soda.
That is very helpful to know, especially like as a mom. I'm like, we don't always have time for everything. And I'm just like, that's why I'm like, don't want to hit burnout. So what led you to the functional medicine?
So about 6 years ago, I woke up one day and I looked like Quasimodo. My face was gigantic and I was swelling all over my body. I was exhausted. I began seeing lots of different doctors trying to figure out what was going on. I had a lot of puzzled looks from doctors of confusion over what my blood levels looked like, and what my symptoms were. They didn't align together. And so eventually I found my way into a functional medicine practice, and they ran all of these tests on me and figured out I had a massive infection in some tooth implants that were in my mouth, and they were leaching into all my entire lymph system. I was being diagnosed with beginning stages of lymphoma, and it was just a really scary, scary time. And so I fought everything naturally. I did everything through changing how I ate, removing the rest of the toxin stuff that I didn't even know, like you said, that was in my home. I thought I already lived really naturally, but there was a lot of things I needed to remove. I began learning how to really turn on my lymphatic system and my drainage systems, because those are so key for your gut and for your body to do its job of removing toxins. I learned how to really get my liver turned on so that my liver was doing its job of having enough bile to break down all of the different things that my body produces so that it was excreting appropriately. And I went from, I was in my mid 30s and I felt like I was in my 60s. I felt awful, to now being in my 40s. I have more energy now in my 40s than I had in my 20s. I now run half.
That'd be nice.
Yes. I mean, it just changed my life. And so I went back to school. I already had a background in medicine and in biology. I had a degree in biology. And so I went back to school and for functional health and learned how to run all the labs on people, how to really look at them, how to formulate plans, how to really go after things. So I work with really complicated health conditions with people. So I work with a lot of people that have IBD, so irritable bowel disease, so Crohn's and UC and celiac disease, other autoimmune diseases like MS and lupus. All of those things are things that I work with people on. I never diagnose people. That's not what my role is. My role is, how do we support your body so you feel better in what's going on in your system? And how do we get to the root of why your body developed this autoimmune disorder and really support it?
Well, so that helps a lot. So yeah. It sounds like you already treat a lot of like the autoimmune issues out there, because one of the things that I've struggled with is always the swelling. I've always struggled with it, and it's just like a person, it's hard to release weight.
Yeah.
Not just because of my trauma, but it's also, I'm always so swollen.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't move very easily. And then I've even went online last night and I'm like, there's got to be a way to get rid of this inflammation, because I got rid of the wheat, because I'm like, well, I know a couple things that I have, and I thought, you know what, maybe I'll just get rid of the wheat, get rid of the caffeine. So I did both of those two things now, but I'm like, I'm still have inflammation going on. And I'm like, what?
You need functional labs. You need functional lab testing. It would be, a great way for you to really get to the root of what's going on. Looking at what is happening in the gut, oftentimes we have things we need to kill off, and then we need to rebuild and reinoculate. And so I like to talk about the gut. That there's a 5R approach to gut health.
Oh, really?
So we like to remove, which means remove things that are impeding our gut's ability to function. So that can be parasitical activity, overgrowth of candida, which is like yeast, too much yeast, overgrowth of other bacteria. Then we like to restore. And restore means that we're going to put good things back in. We like to repair. So oftentimes we have to use different things to repair the intestinal lining that has been damaged from whatever we had to remove. We need to re-inoculate. So we need to implant the good bacteria that our body needs. And then we need to learn to relax. And so relaxing is such a huge key component to gut health, because our body is really impacted by stress. Stress is the number one way that our body goes out of whack, right? And so that stress, external stresses, internal stresses, you touched right on the head of trauma. Trauma is a big one. Those are all reasons that inflammation has gone haywire. So you would be an ideal person to go through the program and really look at what's going on in your gut with your hormones, with your minerals. There would be so much information for us. A lot of times when we feel like, gosh, my body just won't release the weight that I want it to. And I am a very health at every size. I love the Hayes method. I love intuitive eating. I am not a fan of, hey, come to me so we can lose weight. That is never, ever my goal, because I don't believe that that is what health is about. Health is not about losing weight, but sometimes our body needs to release something so that we have freer movement, right? And so we discover what is our true size. There is no one size fits all. What's your true size? What's Robin's true size that makes her feel at her best? Right?
So, like the 225, the 250. I'm just saying, I feel better there. When I was lower in weight, I didn't feel as good.
Yes. And that is so key. So many people, it's so hard because we live in a culture that's just constantly inundating us with lose weight, get a bikini body, have, ripped abs. I mean, muscles are good because they help us to be strong and lift our children up and go do, yard work and do the things that we want to do. But if our goal is just so that we look amazing in a bikini, we might not actually feel good. How many people do you know that are skinny and look great in a bikini are not at their peak performance of energy, feel like they can do things? They're struggling with depression. That's because you've got to figure out what your body needs. And so that's a key component. So your body might need to release some weight to find what fits you perfectly, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe the inflammation is the key component, and we need to get to the root of that and not be focused on removing excess weight that we've so been conditioned to think that is the answer, even by doctors, unfortunately.
True.
Yeah,
the doctors are always like, oh, your BMI is high and this and this and this because, like pregnancy and everything. And I'm like, you know what? I got so angry at this one doctor when I was on pregnancy number 4 or 5, one of the two. I got so angry with the doctor that was doing my ultrasound. I'm like, you know what? Yeah, a lot of things could happen with my ovaries and stuff. But I'm like, the only problem you got is that I'm obese. And I'm a healthy, obese person. There's nothing wrong with it.
Well,
That's
and
my
what's
opinion.
difficult is it is. The problem is that they've been trained that weight is the problem.
And it's not. It's the emotions.
It's so much more complicated than that. We have so many. That's why that mind, body, soul connection is so key, right? We can't just be a physical being. We can't just be a mental being, and we can't just be a soulful being. We have to look at all of the pieces. And so that's a big part of my practice is looking at how we do all of those. I'll give you a little plug. We're going to do another episode together, Robin and I, on the Enneagram.
Yes.
We work in the Enneagram.
I'm excited about that too.
Yeah. We don't quite have enough time to dive into that, but the Enneagram is a fantastic way of looking at kind of a guide to who you are and how you function in relationship. And I use it as a way to really help you understand how do you seek out your greatest healing journey. Because not everyone wants to follow a real strict regimen of this is, the foods that you do, and this is the supplement that you do, and this is how you go about it. That's not everyone. Everyone has a different way that they engage with what it looks like to have a health journey. It doesn't mean you don't have work included. When you're seeking out true, real healing in your body, it takes some work on your part. It takes
a lot
of the areas. Yes, a lot. But that's why hiring someone like myself that's a functional medicine practitioner that has the ability to really guide you through that whole process, because there's a lot of it you can learn online, aside from functional labs and really looking at that stuff. But there's a lot of, concepts that are floating around there that are all really good. But if you don't have someone telling you in what order to do things and how to keep moving forward in the process, oftentimes you just quit, right? Because you feel like, I don't know
what to do. Because I've ran into that myself. I'm like, I'm doing this and this and this and this. And then I'm like, now I finally understand why the college I went to for the hypnotherapy, why they said, well, you must need to go back into your hypnotherapist. Because it's like, okay, I just need like a checkup. It's not like you have to go back all the time once you do start to feel better. But it's like, now I understand the value of, okay, now I just need that checkup, that boost to say, okay, you're on the right track.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like, in your practice, you do a lot of the mind, soul, and body connection that all plays into the total healing process. And that's nice that you do it for a whole year, because I know the healing journey that I've been on it's taken longer than a year.
Yeah.
And I wish it was quick.
You how to be your own doctor.
Huh?
I teach you how to be your own doctor. I teach you how to learn the tools truly, so that at the end of our time together, you know what to reach for in your toolbox when things aren't going well. Because you're right. A healing journey is not something that ends at the end of a year or at the end of a program or the end of some cleanse that you've done. That's not true healing. Healing is moving throughout your life, always knowing what the tools are that you have at your dispense to use to really continue to fuel your life forward. So I'm a functional health practitioner, and I still have times where I might be depleted and feel exhausted. So what do? I go back to the basics of what I know, and sometimes I need to go see my own practitioner. I have a practitioner that I say, hey, I'm not doing well. I need some help. Can you guide me on what I need to do? And she reminds me, you know what? I think we've got some mineral deficiencies happening. You're probably a little bit stressed. Let's take a look at that. So I run these tests on myself all the time through my own functional practitioner. And I walk the walk that I'm talking to people so that I know what it feels like. I know what it feels like to fall off the wagon. I know what it feels like to kind of decide to say, forget it all and just do whatever you want and suffer the consequences. I've done that. That's the 7 Enneagram in me. But I have the tools to get back on board and to get back doing what I need to do.
It's amazing because it's like the longer I've been on this journey for the healing, I'm like, now I understand why people that have done it longer than I am, that are older than I am, why they say that it's a never-ending process. Once you start the healing process, it's a healthy addiction to have because you're constantly wanting just to heal. You just want to constantly shed the stuff that no longer serves you. Yeah. And that's like one of the things I'm like, I already know what it's like. I'm like, okay, if things start getting too much, okay, back up, go back to basics. And it's amazing that along this way, we do so much healing, so much different things that it's just like, we forget that we're human too. And our body's like, okay, come back to the basics.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
So do you have any practical advice for people today that they could walk away with?
Yes. So one of the number one things that I tell people is to make sure you're pooping. Pooping is the key component to making sure that that's your main drainage pathway. So you have multiple drainage pathways. You have a glymph system, which is your brain drainage. You have a lymph system, which is your lymphatic drainage. You have the skin, which is like super important for getting rid of toxins. You have your liver, you have your gallbladder, and then you have your intestines and your colon. And as you can tell, that's like the main opening of pushing things out. So if you aren't pooping, there are 2 things that I can encourage you to do today. Number 1, hydration. I want people to always drink half their weight in water.
Is that ounces or pounds?
Ounces.
Okay. I just had to ask because I'm like, that's just like
a question
that throw me off because I'm like, I always wanted to know that it's supposed to be ounces or pounds.
Yes, like, ounces. So hydration is just so key for your body being able to push toxins out. And then number 2, if you're not having bowel movements 1 to 2 times a day that are what we would call like solid, but not bally, and not super liquidy. So you want kind of in the middle, that are easy to pass and that you feel like you've completed the process when you're done. If that's not happening, I want you to add magnesium citrate to your nightly ritual. You can buy a product called Calm, which is magnesium citrate. You put it in hot water and you drink it, and it will help you the next morning to have a great bowel movement. And those are 2 really practical tips that across the board, I have every client start with. I also have a really great webinar where I teach for 30 minutes all on how to really understand your drainage pathways and how to open them up. That link is going to be in the show notes from Robin. She'll have that for you. Yeah. And it's just leaky gut. It's all on a leaky gut and what that means, and how to really get control over that. So you can go to megaphonefunctionalhealth.com/leaky gut webinar. And that gives you a ton of information. And then it'll also give you a companion guide. And it's just a lot of great beginning stages of how to get your health on the right track. And then if you have further questions, if there's more to it, certainly reach out. I always offer a free consultation. And in my free consultation, I will be super clear with you if I'm not the right person to help you with what you have going on. I only want to help people that I know that I can help. And so you come to me, you give me health history, what's going on. We talk for a while. I kind of explain things to you of the approach that we take. And then we decide, is this a good healing journey for you? Is this something that you want to, walk down and make that decision together? So those are 2 great ways, megaphonefunctionalhealth.com. I'm also on Instagram. You can DM me. I know that that's today's email.
Yes.
People. So you can find me Megaphone Functional Health on Instagram, and you can go ahead and DM me and I'll answer any questions. Even if you just want to ask questions, you don't need to feel like you're being interviewed on whether or not you want to work with me. I love to have conversations with people about what are ways to really seek health, and am I on the right track? Am I doing the right things?
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much, Renee. I really appreciate really appreciate it today. And I'm sure our audience does too, as you know, whether they're tuning in via watching it live, you know, for on YouTube or Facebook, or if you're tuning in, just listening on the podcast. I appreciate it, everybody's time and energy. And thank you so much for being here today, Renee. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. I look forward to coming back, and we'll deep dive into the Enneagram and how that.
Yes.